All right, so welcome back, everybody, or welcome. It's your first time um, to another weekly Course in Miracles teaching session. Um, we've been advancing through different parts of the Song of Prayer, which is a part of the Course in Miracles that came after the rest of it, almost as kind of a summary and a bit of a correction for different interpretations that were taken on the course. So it's kind of a good way to really get some summary topics and get a touch on a lot of those. That said, it is it's very intense because it does summarize the course in just a few short sections, right? The course is like 1,200 pages, but the course really isn't pages. It's not words. It's experience, right? But what it implies is that in these sections, there's a lot of layers. There's a lot of layers that we can't really entirely cover in one session, even covering one section. But just if it doesn't make a lot of sense to you, I just allow that to sit in your mind. Allow the not understanding to sit there, allow the questions to come. But what I invite you to do mostly is pay attention to how does that thought feel? How does that feel? Does it bring me more peace? Does it spark something inside me? Does it trigger something? And those are really what you want to work with, rather than the understanding. It's a big um, uh, something a stumbling block, I would say, for people in the course to try to cognitively understand it. Our goal here is to have an experience, and so I'm hoping through some of my silly animations or cartoons or whatever, we can give you a little bit more of that. But really, this is to complement and um, and help you to delve into your own inner experience. So don't take, none of this is dogma, none of this is um, cognitive beliefs that you have to pick up. They're more just pointers for you to go inside into your own inner experience and just say, how does that feel? Does this feel real for me? Does this feel um, like something that is going to help you to heal, to forgive, and to awaken to unconditional love? And that's really the goal of this whole course, um, is to remove the blocks to love. So this course is really going deep into the blocks, and that's what we're going to be doing today. Um, I think it'll be a little shorter than other times, but we'll see how deep we want to go into this uh, when we talk about praying for others. All right, so I'm going to share my screen just to bring you guys to my little diagram that I'm going to be using. All right. All right. So here I'm just going to go over a few diagrams and then we're going to go to the text. I think that's where we'll spend most of our time, just kind of going through it. Um, so there's a lot going on here. I kind of am making my best use of the icons, I guess, available on PowerPoint. Uh, but I think if we can kind of get a little bit of a grasp of this, we're looking to our inner experience here when we're talking about praying for others. And it's helpful to remember, and just to recap a little bit about what we talked about last week, is that prayer is not an action, right? It's not just like where you pray and say, God, help this person or help me with this problem or whatever. It is a continual action within the mind. So wanting anything. And if you pay attention to your mind, that's always thinking, that's always planning, that's always has goals and concerns and worries and things that it needs. Um, and even in our experience now, like our body always has to breathe, right? It always has a need. There's always something that it has to consume or to get. And that's really what we're talking about. So it's a very broad experience, but if you go deep into it, it's a function of the mind and of the ego mind, that there's always something. It's always unsatisfied. It's always looking and seeing lack. And so the process or the ladder of prayer, right, is to move from our prayer of the ego, which is of seeing lack and doing something to fill that lack, whether it's praying to ego God, to whether it's working, whether it's breathing, whether it's eating, all of these things. And actually, we can't help it as long as we believe that we're an ego. We're always in that that declaration of lack, and that comes through separation. So this praying for others, this section of the text. It took me quite a while to really sit with it, to be like, what the hell is going on here? Because it is not intuitive at all if you've already read through it. It goes in a direction that you wouldn't really expect, because when we typically think of praying for others, we think of our friend who has cancer, our mother who has dementia or is in the hospital, and they need prayers, right? We need to help them out. We need to ask God to get them better, right? Or even if you don't think of it in the religious sense, we need to do something to get them better. So seeing lack, our ego is like, oh my God, my partner's sick or whatever. We need to do something. We need to get them fasting or on a ketogenic diet. We need to bring them to the hospital. We need to give them medications. All of those are forms of ego prayer. And it's not to be judged, but it's just something to notice, that it's a seeing of lack and or of some sort of harm, and the wanting and doing of something to fix it within the dream. And that's the big context that I really want to stress here, because this is the puzzle piece that puts all of this together. And that is that when we're praying for others, doing something for others, trying to help others, feeling compassion for others who are being bombed or are being harmed in some way, we think we're doing it from this place here. That's our experience. That's poor little me over here, just innocent little me, I want to do something good for this other person who seems to be suffering, right? And it doesn't that feel like such a good deed, right? But that's what I found kind of incredible about this section of the course. Is like, the course is kind of calling you out that, like, no, there's vengeance in that. And so, like, that almost seems like a shocker, that they're hidden just behind that nice little good deed is a form of vengeance. So I'm like, where is this coming from? And it comes from when we really go deeper, when we really awaken to who we really are, is that we're not poor little Patrick, right? We're not nice little prayerful Patrick who's praying for his friends, or even praying for his enemies. We are not that. We are consciousness itself. We are the dreamer of this whole dream. And so what's happening within this dream, if I'm dreaming up, if not this whole dream, all of the characters and all of the happenings within the dream are actually happening within my own mind. And so if I'm dreaming up a dream of a nice little me, like Patrick, who's praying or trying to help his friends, what we're not implying there is a few things. Is that I'm the one who's dreaming that up. I'm the one who's putting them into this image of a victim. And more so, again, this is where we're getting deep into a lot of layers here. Anytime I perceive somebody as a victim, there is always a victimizer within the dream. And that's something that can be difficult to tease out um, within our mind. But I invite you, um, when you sit with that, when you see somebody be harmed, some of it's pretty obvious. If you look, for example, say you have a long lost relative who's lives in Gaza, right? And you see what's going on there, and you want to pray or you want to go out and protest or whatever, because they're being bombed, um, and their house is being destroyed and people are being killed. There, it's not so hard to kind of see, well, who's doing that to them, right? There you can see very clearly, actually, that when you're seeing a victim there, you're also seeing a victimizer. And where it's not so obvious is where we see something like sickness. Somebody got the flu or whatever. If we're seeing that as this person got cancer, and it's a friend of ours or whatever. Sometimes we're not aware of it, but within the dream, there's always a feeling of blame. And what the Course says is that there's no form of suffering whatsoever that fails to hide an unforgiving thought. So behind every form of suffering is a form of unforgiveness, which means that there's a form of blame. So often when we're sick, if we open our minds to it, often we're reluctant to do that. Often we'll feel, at least in the world, that, oh, well, somebody else sick went near them and they got them sick, right? Or they didn't wear a mask, or they didn't get vaccinated, right? Those will often show up. Or it was the boss who overworked them and didn't give them time off, and so of course they're so stressed out that they got sick. Or it can even be a blame on themselves. Oh, well, they were smoking, or they only eat junk food. Well, of course they're going to get diabetes and lose their leg. It's their own fault, right? Um, and so some of those are manifestations of that blame. They're not the real source of it, but in our mind, there's always something there. And more so, what we always need to consider is our conception of God. And again, I want to use a very broad conception here, because we're not just talking about the religious God. If you're religious, it tends to show up as a religious God. If you're not, even if you're an atheist, there's a sense of the world. Is the world a just place? Is the world a peaceful and safe place for me to be in? Is the world, or karma, is the karma, good, flowing towards me? Am I a lucky person or not? So even if you're not religious, it's the same sense. And what I invite you to explore in your own inner world is that feeling of a God, of the world, of, what is your sense of the world and this world that we're living in? Because that really is the dream. And that sense of God, even that you feel within the dream, unless you're in complete ecstasy and love, unconditional love and peace, you're not praying to the real God. and uh, so what we experience, and that's what I want to put here, is that if we're having a dream that somebody that we love or even that we hate is sick or being harmed, who made them that way, right? What allowed that to happen? Is there really a loving God, right? If he's allowing them to be sick, and how? And here's another layer of it too: is like, how insane is it that we pray to a God to heal our friend or our mother? You know what I mean? So if we really believed that this God is unconditionally loving, all powerful, always at peace, always giving, always like without blame, how the hell do we have to pray to this guy to get him to heal my mother? Why did she even get sick in the first place, right? So what God are we really praying to when we're praying to a God to heal our friend, right? It's definitely not unconditionally loving, always healing, always beneficent, right? Like, why did you even let them get sick in the first place? So again, this could be very provoking to some people, and I know, like, if it might be disturbing of your sense of God, or it might sound blasphemous, but what I'm saying is this guy up here is not God. That is not God. This is a figure within the dream, because God has nothing to do with any of this. This is all within our dream. The God, the true God, well, the one that we find within ourselves, and you feel it, you know it when you feel it. It's not about believing in God, it's an experience, is unconditional love. God is unconditional peace. God is spirit, is unchanging, is in it pure innocence and beneficence, right? And you can feel it, unchanging. And that's what heaven really is. So anything that can change is a product of our own dream. And that's very scary. That is a scary thought. Our minds can be very resistant to that, because we don't want to believe that we're the source. We're the source of the war going on in the Middle East. We're the source of the Holocaust. We wanted that, right? There's a part of our mind that is dreaming that up. Granted, nothing that we see means anything. So all of this is all based on a lie that we could be separate from that source that is unconditionally loving, that God can create something that's completely unhinged from his nature, right? Um, so that is this world, this insane world that we live in, that doesn't make any sense and is built on vengeance, separation, guilt. So as we explore this section of the text, I think that this is really important context to look at as we explore how do we really pray for others. Because the truth is that there are no others. All of this is within our mind. So all of this is within us. So as we explore that, as we look for that, when we're praying for others, we cannot send love. We cannot send, oh, here's back. As we awaken and we're able to move into deeper levels of prayer, of deeper levels of spiritual awakening, of the power of our mind to heal within the dream, to change the dream, to forgive and awaken the happy dream. We cannot do that from down here. Patrick is powerless. Patrick is selfish, selfish, angry, like that's our ego self. Our ego self cannot do any of this. So that level of prayer, I'm not saying you should stop doing it or whatever. You can do all that. Just observe it though and see what's really behind it. So, and I think this is important because it's going to awaken us to open our minds to what true prayer really is. Because true prayer is never asking for something, asking for change, right? It is always an awakening to what we always are. And that other person, that seeming other person, always is. But one of the characteristics of true prayer and of unconditional love is that it has to be universal. So we cannot, from this place of the dreamer, if we're going to awaken to our true nature as unconditional love, we cannot be praying for this guy. We cannot be praying for Gaza and not be and not be giving that same love, appreciation, and gratitude and healing to the state of Israel, right? You can't do that. So this level of love would be like, oh God, please help save the people, save the people of Gaza, but smite the people of Israel or whatever, right? Because for bombing the civilians or whatever. Or you could be the opposite. Honestly, it's all the same game. People who support Israel, it's going to be the exact same thing. I'm not a supporter of either side. My ego might be, but I know that behind it is all my own guilt, right? And so what this section of the course, as we read through it, is really inviting us to do is that in order to bring the love, in order to bring the true healing, the healing that does not come from this ego God who's fickle, sometimes he's blessing you, sometimes he's cursing you. Like, if we want to bring the healing power, the true love from the God of unconditional love, of peace, of healing, and forgiveness, uh, it must come in a universal manner. So it has to be spread to all of it. It has to be unconditional. And so it's pretty easy to pray for your friends, right? But it's much more difficult for us to pray like not just pray like change them, but pray seeing the light, right? And experiencing the love and the blessing, and seeing the Christ in uh, the enemies. So what we're looking for is the cause of these people, of our friends suffering, and that could be the ego God, right? Because if you look at it, you go through those stages of grief. When somebody is horribly hurt, there's always that sense of anger, like why did this happen, right? The religious person, that's going to go to God, or at least your conception of God. So this figure as well needs forgiveness, right? Or you could be the world, right? Or karma, whatever you want to call it, the government, whatever your sense of the world is what needs forgiveness. Whatever caused your friend, your loved one, the one you identify with, to be harmed, that is the most effective means to bring healing to the friend. We're going to go through the sections on healing as well, but this all comes together. So forgiveness of the ones who cause the harm, who seem to cause the harm, is the greatest means to bring healing to this part of your mind, this loved one who seems to be separate but really is a part of you. Okay, so there's a lot going on there. The text will hopefully pull us through some of that. Before we move into that, I do want to review another section which can bring us into this sense a little bit more. And that's going to be basically the review of special love. Like, what is special love? And this is a topic of the course that goes in deeply in other places. Because, like I said, when we think of praying for others, we usually think of our loved ones, right, who might be harmed or whatever. And so special love is essentially that ego level love, right? And so if we think of the dog here as us, special love, I'll read the section of the course here because it kind of helps to explain. So special love relationship is an attempt to limit the destructive effects of hate by finding a haven in the storm of guilt. It makes no attempt to rise above the storm into the sunlight. On the contrary, it emphasizes the guilt outside the haven by attempting to build barricades against it and keep within them. The special love relationship is not perceived as a value in itself, but as a place of safety from which hatred is split off and kept apart. The special love partner is acceptable only as long as he serves this purpose. Hatred can enter, and indeed is welcome in some aspects of the relationship, but is still held together by the illusion of love. If the illusion goes, the relationship is broken or becomes unsatisfying on the grounds of disillusionment. That's just one section of that whole section that goes deeply into special love. But I think it helps us as well, because this section of the course is going to go into praying for our enemies, right? And so it's like, how does praying for others make sense? And hopefully I'm shedding a little bit of light about that. It's that our loved ones, the idea that we have loved ones, our family, our children, our parents, um, or even our partner, or even it extend to other things like our country or my company that I work for that I love working there, right? So this is a universal aspect of our life as an ego. We have people that we like, we have places that we like, that we love, and we have places that we don't. Um, and essentially, what's happening here is that that feeling of love, right, of being in love or liking, is actually a thin veil on top of hatred. And that's very, this is a deep level. Like it took me a while to really start to see this because our minds are very resistant to seeing this. But the more that we seem to love somebody as an ego, the more hatred is hidden just behind that. And we can see that very often, honestly. It's hard to see within ourselves, but we can see that in the world quite clearly. Um, when somebody is deeply in love with somebody else and then they cheat on them. Like those are often the marriages or relationships that will quickly turn to hatred, murderous hatred sometimes, or these nasty divorces that where you just want to destroy that other person's life, right? And what's going on there, right? Because they were so deeply in love. And ironically, the more deeply in love or infatuated you are with something or somebody else, the more quickly and the more deeply it will change to hatred. And the reason is because it actually is hatred. It's not actually love. And that is very difficult to see within yourself. Like it is hard. And really, we're very resistant until we start to experience more and more of these experiences of oneness, of unconditional love. And when you see that it is completely different from our human versions of love. Um, and um, so what's going on here? So here's my little diagram here. If you look as an example uh, somebody who's just falling in love with a love partner or whatever, right? So he's seeing this cat. Oh, she's thin. She's so good. She's amazing, or whatever. Maybe she actually is. And this person, this dog is completely in love, right? So he or whatever is seeing only good in that person or whatever, but basically seeing a lack within himself that this person can fill, right? So, oh, I have the hottest girlfriend cat or whatever, or I have somebody who treats me exactly the way that I want to, or she has the status that I want to, or whatever. Um, uh, when you look at the wider experience within that, there's always this sense that this is the person that I love and other people aren't, right? Oh, I'm in love with this girl. She's so hot or whatever. But when we look hidden within that same dream, right, is the sense that of disgust or at least feeling of distance and separation, right, from the ones you don't find attractive. And that's just one example. We're not just talking romantic love relationships. I love this person, but because she's so nice, but I can't stand people who gossip, right? Or I love countries that are democratic, but I don't like ones that are communist, right? Like China. If you look at that, anything you like, anything you love within the world is a hidden hatred. Because at the very least, it can be, I love you, but not others. Or what it is, even within yourself, if you imagine these two are the same cat. Oh, I love you because you're so hot or whatever. But as soon as you gain 400 pounds, you're out. And often it's not just about that. That seems superficial, but it can be other things. You cheat on me. I hate you. You leave me. I hate you. Right? Or even at the very least, because we have some of these sometimes within our dream that we have these perfect person, our perfect partner, they're always loving, they're always there for me, they're always kind, whatever. As soon as they're not, right, they get a brain injury, or even they just die, at the very least, even if you have the most angelic character within your dream, at the very least, they always die. And that is built in. Death is built into the operating system of this matrix. And so, built into that, we always dream of loss, of taking away what we always wanted and we always needed. And so that's why it can be difficult to see. But anytime that we see somebody as um, the perfect or good or liking them, there's always hidden behind that a hatred. And so um, what the Course invites us to, and our mind is very reluctant to do that, the more that we can see that, just bring that to the light, it allows us to see the ego for what it really is. And this Patrick guy, right? Like he seems to be loving or whatever, but it takes very little. You don't take in the groceries or whatever. Like I can feel that there's a hatred behind there, and that is because not because of what's going on within the dream, but because of what's going on within the mind of the dreamer. And so, what really needs to be healed here is not that we become an ever loving little ego, but is to awaken to the hatred within the mind here and to heal it on that level. But that can sometimes help us a little bit in this section of the course where we're talking uh, about enemies, right? Because really, if you believe you have somebody who's not your enemy, they're completely on your side, within that mindset, if you sit with it for long enough and you expand your consciousness outward, you've created an enemy, right? Because you've created separation. You've created good people and bad people. And so when you think you're praying for your good friend, you've made a declaration that the other ones are not. They are not worthy of your love. So there's a lot going on here. And there's a lot going on in this section, but I just wanted to put a little bit of that out there. I have a little video. It's kind of funny, just to give a little example of special before we move into the text. See if I can pull it up here. Let's share my screen. It's really short. Okay, it's just a short, funny video. The mailman, I deliver mail. This is the perfect time. I am the perfect time. I'm really neighbor. This is the perfect time. Nothing bad ever happens. Nothing bad ever happens. I just came from Denver. This is the perfect time. So anyway, that's just one example. It's obviously a caricature, but it's kind of a little bit, gives you a little bit of a hint of what special love is, right? That when you have a perfect town with all the perfect people, right, and everybody's doing their job, everybody does what they're meant to do, the neighbors being neighborly or whatever, you love this town, right? Nothing bad ever happens, right? Then as soon as something stops meeting your expectations, right, all of a sudden you ruined it, right? You ruined our dream. And that is what happens with special love. And be aware, because look at your life, look at your relationships. How many of them are always meeting your expectations, right? Probably a lot of them, right? And so you got to wonder, right? what happens if that stops? And that is ego love. And it's not to be condemned. Egos can only do that, right? So we're not looking here to judge it, being like, oh, well, I have unconditional love, but others don't, right? This is no, egos only have that. And if you're in denial of it, then it's going to eventually show. And that's why what happens in a spiritual awakening is that because we're in this process of awakening and to seeing the truth and to healing and to forgiveness, a big part of the process is of starting to see that these relationships that seem to be loving and all are always great, maybe they're actually based on always meeting my expectations. And so a big part thing that happens in a spiritual awakening is all those expectations. Sometimes, usually it's little by little, they start to turn on you, right? Or somebody doesn't even necessarily mean you have to break up, but you can start to see that hidden just behind that special love is not so happy ego when they stop meeting your expectations, right? And the perfect little town all of a sudden turns into a place of a murder or a lynching or whatever, right? So um, that's just something to be a little bit aware of as we go through. It's a big section of the whole course, right? Something we really delve into, but we're just kind of briefly touching on it to bring to your awareness. All right, so let's go to the actual text. All right, so this one's a little shorter. We'll go through it. So this is the section on praying for others. And I'd like to put that in quotation marks because I think that kind of, if it fit, that's what they'd be doing. Okay, we said that prayer is always for yourself, and this is so. Why then should you pray for others at all? And if you should, how should you do it? Praying for others, if rightly understood, becomes a means for lifting your projections of guilt from your brother and enabling you to recognize it is not he who is hurting you. The poisonous thought that he is your enemy, your evil counterpart, your nemesis, must be relinquished before you can be saved from guilt. For this the means is prayer, of rising power and ascending goals until it reaches even up to God. God is synonymous with unconditional love. So here he's kind of addressing that prayer for others is kind of a contradiction, right? Because there are no others. There's just us. And there is others as long as we believe that we're an ego, but we're not really an ego. We're the dreamer of the whole dream. We're one. And so uh, uh, what's really important here is if you look at what we talked about with special love, when we think that we're praying for a loved one, hidden just behind that is, okay, you love this person, but is there some hatred hidden behind that, right? And so sometimes we can be reluctant to see the enemy, to see others as enemies, because you're the good one, but there's always a bad one. So that's really our biggest object if we really want to get to this experience of oneness, is to look at the enemy. Praying for the ones that we love is helpful, but more so when they stop meeting our expectations or they don't do it consistently, and you can see through special love. Special love starts to fade away, and we start to see the special hatred as we start to move into unconditional love, because unconditional love sees through all of it. Okay, so the earlier forms of prayer at the bottom of the ladder will not be free from envy and malice. They call for vengeance, not for love. Nor do they come from one who understands that they are calls for death, made out of fear by those who cherish guilt. They call upon a vengeful God, and it is he who seems to answer them. Hell cannot be asked for another and then escaped by him who asks for it. Only those who are in hell can ask for hell. Those who have been forgiven and who accepted their forgiveness could never make a prayer like that. So here, moving back to our first diagram, right, is uh, realizing that this prayer at the bottom of the ladder, right, of praying, heal my mother who's sick, right, heal my um, friend who has cancer or who's gone bankrupt and needs money. Um, it hidden behind that is the part of our mind that has made them into that, right? And not just made them into that, but is blaming either the ego god or some other source within the world, right? The government that forced them to get the vaccine, right? Or whatever. Within that, because our brother is not one specific person, we're all one. So you can't pray for one without praying for the others, right? And so within that prayer, as egos, that's what we do. And so when we're doing that, we're actually calling out either the ego god, the world, the government. Uh, we're calling for vengeance. Um, and so if you think, for example, of the war situation, you think of Gaza or whatever, right? If you're calling for a ceasefire, right? Um, then we're calling for the will of Israel, whatever, to be thwarted, or we're calling for justice. So if that is happening within your mind, um, you're praying for another person's will to be impeded, right? For them to be enslaved to your will and what you think should happen. And so none of that really is the realm of unconditional love. None of that is the realm of spirit. Because within that realm is the realization that none of that really means anything. The truth of us is that we're not even here, right? And so, um, so what we think of as a good deed within the world really is a hidden um, truth or layer of the dream that we are the ones that have done this. We did this to them. We're the ones who made them sick. We've made them into the victim, right? And so when the Holy Spirit and on this deep level of prayer and opening comes, it always comes with a realization that we're the ones doing all of it. And that brings us back to our place of power because God created us powerful as himself. We are the truth of what we really are is that we are like God in every single way, except that he is our source. And that's really radical, ever all powerful, ever loving, innocent, unchanging. And if you look at what we believe about ourselves, what we experience as an ego, as we experience in the world, that is not at all what we experience. So this course really is about awakening to that deep part, that consciousness within us that never left heaven, that is always there. And so when we call upon a God to fix, what we have done within the world, saying that he did it, we've created this crazy, um, harmful ego God. And so we're the ones hidden behind that seeming good deed is a deeper layer of calling for death, right? And and why would we call when you've experienced yourself as immortal, when you've experienced yourself in that realm of spirit, why would you call for them to be healed, right, within the world? Um, in the sense that often what we're praying for, when we're praying for somebody else who seems to be sick, the issue is that we're praying for them to go back to being a body, heal him back to being human, back to being my partner, back to being mortal, back to being living in a world where there is no satisfaction for our spirit, right? A world where that void within us can never really be filled. And so when our ego prayers are being made, they're actually calling to wrest those people back into our dream of misery, right? Of hatred and misery. And so again, like this is deep stuff. So what that's why when we're moving into this prayer, and we'll get into this a little later, is that we always invite the Holy Spirit, right? That higher part of ourselves that remembers who we really are. Because what we're really asking for is that when we're seeing somebody else is sick, somebody else is harmed, what we really need is for our minds to be healed. They're not the sick ones. We're the sick ones. We're the sick ones who've dreamed up this dream of insanity, of sin, guilt, fear, harms caused by people, and um, and of death, right? And so, what really needs the healing is our own mind, and that's really what we're inviting. Anytime we're praying for others on a deep level, if you want to move into that deep level, it is of praying that my mind that has wanted to see this person is sick, heal that. Lord, clearly I'm insane. Holy Spirit, clearly I'm insane. Heal my mind. And that's really what we want to be moving into, because it restores the power back into our own mind. Okay, at these levels then, the learning goal must be to recognize that prayer will bring an answer only in the form in which the prayer was made. This is enough. From here, it will be an easy step to the next levels. The next ascent begins with this. What I have asked for my brother is not what I would have. Thus I have made of him my enemy. So when you realize, and again, what's difficult here is that we often think of, well, what I'm asking for my brother, the one that I like, for the side that I'm on, I've been asking for victory, right? I've been asking for that job that I've been asking for, right? Um, to the exclusion of everybody else who maybe wants that job as well, right? And this world is made up of that. It's made up of a world of scarcity. And so what we're not realizing is that when we're asking for something for our loved ones, we're making an implication that the others are not deserving of it. So it's not that universal love. So what I've made is maybe not of my partner who's sick, an enemy, but I've made of him and the world that I've dreamt him in, as an enemy of him, and therefore of me. And so that is the object. That's where the forgiveness needs to come in to bring healing to that person. So it is apparent that this step cannot be reached by anyone who sees no value or advantage to himself in setting others free. This may be long delayed because it seems to be dangerous instead of merciful. To the guilty, there seems to indeed to be a real advantage in having enemies, and this imagined gain must go if enemies are to be set free. So this may be long. So the goal here is, I'm tempted here. Just one second. I don't know if I can share this. I'm currently looking at my PowerPoint. Not sure if you guys can see that. Somebody could just put in the chat if you can see my PowerPoint right now. Sorry. Okay. So what we think we need to pray for is the sick person in front of us, right? But the real object of prayer is to really pray for the part of our dream that hides the hidden guilt, So if we're seeing our friends and family or people who we identify with or people we see as innocent being bombed, then it's really our prayer and joining and unity and seeing the innocence in uh, the person who's doing the bombing or seems to be doing the bombing that will bring the healing to the situation. Um, and that's, our minds are very resistant to that. How could you do that? How could you let them off the hook? How could you just allow and be peaceful and loving and see that other person is completely equal to yourself and to the others, right? It's, our minds are very resistant. We need to stop the evildoers, right? But what we really need to do is undo the evil doing and seeing that within the dream, unseeing it. So guilt must be given up and not concealed, nor can this be done without some pain, and a glimpse of the merciful nature of this step for some time be followed by a deep retreat into fear. For fear's defenses are fearful in themselves, and when they are recognized, they bring their fear with them. Yet what advantage has an illusion of escape ever brought prisoner? His real escape from guilt can lie only in the recognition that the guilt has gone. And how can this be recognized as long as he hides it in another and does not see it as his own? Fear of escape makes it difficult to welcome freedom, and to make a jailer of an enemy seems to be safety. How then can he be released without an insane fear for yourself? You have made of him your salvation and your escape from guilt. Your investment in this escape is heavy, and your fear of letting it go is strong. So within our mind, there is a deep need to see other as enemy. And it might not be the ones that we love, but there's always within the mind, as long as we see ourselves as an ego, there's always a totalitarian government or or powerful corporations or banks that control things, or just somebody who's more powerful than you, not meeting your expectations. But our mind always has a need to see somebody else as guilty. And so really it's the undoing of that guilt through forgiveness that really allows that to come true. Stand still an instant now and think what you have done. Do not forget that it is you who did it and who can therefore let it go. Hold out your hand. This enemy has come to bless you. Take his blessing and feel how your heart is lifted and your fear released. Do not hold on to it nor on to him. He is a son of God along with you. He is no jailer, but a messenger of Christ. Be this to him, that you may see him thus. It is not easy to realize that prayers for things, for status, for human love, for external gifts of any kind are always made to set up jailers and to hide from guilt. These things are used for goals that substitute for God or unconditional love, and therefore distort the purpose of prayer. The desire for them is the prayer. One need not ask explicitly. The goal of God or unconditional love is lost in the quest for lesser goals of any kind, and prayer becomes requests for enemies. The power of prayer can be quite clearly recognized even in this. No one who wants an enemy will fail to find one, but just as surely will he lose the only true goal that is given him. Think of the cost and understand it well. All other goals are at the cost of God or unconditional love. So there's a lot in there. Honestly, again, this is summarizing a lot of deep layers of the course that honestly I need to sit with for quite a while longer. But what I'm trying to explain a little bit, and I think that's important, is that hidden behind our ego love of wanting to do things for others, wanting to give things, wanting to fix others, wanting to fixed within the dream is really a form of special love. And hidden behind that is a hatred because we're loving somebody and not somebody else. Um, and so within that, we lose the universality of unconditional love. And so that's why this course and these sections of it focus so heavily on the enemy, because that is the one, if we're willing to see it within ourselves, that is the one, or it's, or yes, it's the one that is blocking. It is the block to universe, to unconditional love. So as we forgive, as we um, pray to the God, that the Christ that is in within that other person, and the cause of the illness, of the suffering, will then be taken out of the dream, because it will be removed from the mind of the dreamer and will no longer have the need to dream up of guilty people who have harmed somebody within the dream. So there's a lot there. This is very deep. This is a lot to meditate on, honestly. If even a little bit of it spoke to you, just sit with that and just allow whatever to be there. But it is a deep exploration of the mind, of the deep layers of the mind that we're very resistant to seeing. I don't know how to. I'm just going to stop the share. Okay. All right. So I'm going to leave it at that, but I will open it up if people have any questions, or if people want to comment, if anything resonated with you or didn't. Um, Feel free. If not, we'll um, move on to meditation. All right. I will, at the end of the video, I'll turn the recording off. And if so people want to talk then, and they don't want to be on the video, that will work as well. All right. So I'm going to move on because I picked out this lesson. We're going to be going to lesson 37. Essentially because I wanted to move into, because we talked so much honestly about what prayer is not, right? And looking at the ego prayers that we're in 24 hours a day, right? About what we're the ones that are causing all the harm in the world. We're the ones that are dreaming of, and on some level want uh, ourselves or others to be suffering, right? In order to push the guilt outward, to remove the guilt from ourselves. And so that's very depressing. It's kind of very dark. The practice of the course really is of looking at those that darkness and bringing it to the light. Because when we see that, our minds are very resistant to seeing it. When we do see it, it can be very disturbing. Um, but the truth is that all of that darkness, none of it is true. It's not the truth of what we really are. We are the unconditional love. The truth is that we're always at one with God and with each other. Um, what this lesson is essentially to bring us to open up to that part of the mind that is always there, and that's the Holy Spirit, our inner teacher, the remembrance of heaven, and it's always within us. And so this lesson 37 can really help to awaken the truth of us, and this is where this awakens us to the prayer that our spirit is always engaged in, that is very powerful, that is very healing, and that brings incredible results. Um, uh, but we can only do that when we've allowed ourselves to see through the darkness of the ego. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. I'm just going to skim through it a little bit. So this one is my holiness blesses the world. So I'll read through little bits of it, but they're going to go through it in the video. But this idea contains the first glimmerings of your true function within the world, or why you are here. Your purpose is to see the world through your own holiness. And this is one of the words that I had a lot of difficulty with when I first started this course, because I came from a Christian background. It was negative in my experience. And then I eventually came to an experience of God outside of that. So I was resistant to a lot of these words. But so this is not holiness like piety, being a good person, being like a prayerful person or whatever. It's not that. So your holiness is something that you can feel within yourself. So holiness is your loving presence. So when you move into the present moment and you just feel the I am presence, right? There's going to be a lot of things going on. There's thoughts racing through your mind. There's words being spoken now. But if you move inward, and I invite you to do that right now, if you close your eyes, if you move inward within yourself, if you can just feel into your body, you might be feeling pain there. You might be feeling tension. But if you just allow whatever is going on for you right now, whether it's boredom, whether it's distraction, whether it is thoughts and worries that are going on, the more you can allow that and just bring or awaken to just the presence of the present moment, hidden just right beneath that is your true nature, right? Behind all the crazy goings on, all of their goals, all of your thoughts is a loving presence. And that is God, really, a God that comes through you, that comes into the dream through you. So that's what we're talking about with our holiness. It is a radiating presence that can feel like the observer state when you're first getting into it. But as you sit with that observation, um, there is a givingness to it. There is an unconditional love that allows whatever is going on right now within your life or within the whole world. So that's really what we're talking about with holiness. It is the innocence, it is the unconditional love that is always here, even if it's hard to feel it. If you get just little glimmers of it, it is extremely powerful because it's the truth of what you are. When we're delving into this course, we go into a lot of the darkness because the darkness is here. And the way the world deals with it is through special love, being like, well, I have my little family, I have my little life, and everything's good here, even though I can see all the destruction in the world. That's not the goal of the course. The course is of actually moving into the truth of what we are, which is that we've never left heaven, we're one with God, and that we are like him in every way except that he is our source. And so that loving presence that's there can cut through the dream. It can remove the guilt that is the cause of all the suffering in the whole world. So it's very hard. It can be very hard at first to feel that within yourself. If we're talking about a feeling, our loving presence. And so what this lesson is opening us up to is that when we give that, when we feel often that God's love is something that we want to get, but it's actually something that we give. And we can't experience it until we give it. So that's what this lesson really is bringing us into. That regardless of what our egos do within the dream of who is harmed, who is bombed, who is doing the bombing, beneath all of it is a loving presence. And that is what we really are. So that's what I invite you to explore that feeling. I feel it typically in my heart. And what this is going to invite us into is to find that within yourself and to begin to give it away, of allow it to flow out of you. And as you do, you'll notice it grow. So the truth, love, peace, all of this grows as we give it away. So it might feel a little bit fake or it might not feel true, but I invite you just to pay attention to that presence. Try to feel it as much as you can. Doesn't mean you're going to feel, you might be feeling all the hatred, you might be feeling the fear, you might be feeling the depression, but I invite you to look even in the midst of that. The more you allow that, can you bring that presence and allow that presence, or just witness that presence that's still there through it? And that is the truth of what we are. And it might seem like just a little glimmer at first, but it grows. And that is the light that melts away the darkness. And so this holiness, this loving presence is our salvation, because and it is what's going to melt away all the suffering, all the thoughts, all of the darkness that we're exploring within the course, because that's the work of the course. The course is to bring the darkness to the light. So this lesson is about bringing the light, or allowing the light, because it's always there. All right. So we're going to go to meditation here.
Free your mind, a guided and experiential daily practice designed to dissolve past programming and expand your awareness of who and what you truly are beyond the matrix of fear, lack, and separation. Let's begin. This is a holy instant. Begin to rest and relax. An instant to stop and remember. Remember who you truly are. You are not living, but unliving, not mortal, but or we're not alive. These
Oh, sorry about that, guys. Yeah, so I was just getting reports from people that they weren't hearing the sound. So I turned up the volume on the YouTube, but I've also put it into the link into the chat, so you can play it on your end if you want to. Um, uh, yeah, so I'm not sure if everybody couldn't hear it, but it was most of you. I don't know if you still can hear me, but um, okay, I'm gonna restart it now.
Your awareness to this holy instant now, an instant of investing your energy and attention to make contact with your unconditional freedom. Feel into it now. Instant to stop. Feel into the frequency of your true self and use this guided experience to expand your awareness beyond the limits of your current reality. My holiness blesses the world. With your eyes remaining closed, repeat this idea slowly to yourself and contemplate its meaning. My holiness blesses the world. Feel into the frequency of your holiness. You are holy because the infinite creator is holy. And you are an inseparable part of the infinite whole. Perceive through the eyes of your dream character self. Do not see this. Identify it as the body, identified with the habits, patterns, vices of the dream character personality. The vision of your holiness eludes your sight. But just because you are not aware of it does not mean that it is not right here where you are breathing. God shared. It's the you. It's to your true spiritual function. Points to why you. Your purpose is to see the world through your own lens. That's liberty. In essence, your purpose is to see reality as it really is. Whole, perfect, always. This vision signifies the end of conflict. Embraces all of creation, creator, Without this shift in perception, there is no other way in which the idea of sacrifice and separation can be removed from your experience of the world. Any other way of seeing will inevitably demand payment of something or someone. And as a result of this, you as the perceiver will experience a sense of loss, lack, and limitation. Nor will you have any idea why you are losing. By recognizing your own holiness, your own divine, perfect, innocent, and complete nature, as you were created by the divinity. Wholeness is restored to your awareness through your vision. So your holiness blesses everyone by asking nothing of them. Those who see themselves as whole make no demands. So you see then that in your presence, as you ask nothing to be different, as you ask no one to be different, as you accept this experience fully as it is now, moment by moment, in this presence, the people around you will experience a deep sense of acceptance that will remind them of who and what they truly are, even if they are not conscious of it. That sense of allowing all things to be as they are in this moment is peace. More than that, it is bliss and happiness. And so it is your holiness, your awareness of your holiness, that is the salvation of the world, the liberation of the world. It lets you teach the world and everyone in it that it is one, that they are one with you. Not by preaching to them, not by telling them anything, but merely by your quiet recognition that in your holiness are all things blessed along with you. Let's practice now. Begin with the repetition of the idea for today. My holiness blesses the world. Repeat the idea slowly and hurriedly to yourself. Slowly open up. The next minute or so, look about you as you apply the idea to whatever you see. For example, my holiness blesses those peas. My holiness blesses that palm tree. My holiness blesses this cup. Continue on your own. Do this. Close your eyes again. Apply the idea to any person who occurs to you using his or her name and saying, "My holiness blesses you," inserting their name. For example, "My holiness blesses you," or you. Continue on your own now for the next minute. For the next 3 minutes or so, you may continue the practice with your eyes closed, or you may open your eyes again and apply the idea to the outer world if you desire. You may alternate between applying it to what you see around you and to those who are in your thoughts. Or you may use any combination of these two phases of application as you prefer. Do this now. with a repetition of that idea, your eyes closed. Mindfulness lessens the word. And another repetition made with your eyes open. Slow breath. Practice. Breathe at the top for a moment. Exhale, relax. Practice. Remember to bring the sight to the rest of your day. Repeating as often as it's particularly helpful to apply it silently to anyone you meet, using his or her name as you do so. It is also recommended that you use the sight if anyone seems to cause an adverse reaction in you. Offer him or her the blessing of your holiness in you, that you may learn to keep it in your own awareness. Thank you. Investing your time and your awakening.
All right. I just want to share a few other things I think that um, can be helpful in just kind of summarizing a bit of what happened here. Hopefully, some of you are able to feel some of that. Um, what's really important is the ideas of this course, our true nature, unconditional love, forgiveness. They're strengthened as we give them away. So often, if we can't feel them within ourselves, the more that we try to give it, um, uh, the more it grows within us. I'm just going to share my screen one more time here. But going back here, the power of this practice, when you can really get it, is that within the mind here is guilt, right? And because we need to see somebody as guilty, either the ego god who's done this to them, or whatever else in the world has caused this other person or ourselves to be ill. But when we tune into our holiness, who we really are, united with God, what that does is it brings innocence into the mind of the dreamer. When we remove the guilt from the mind of the dreamer, all of a sudden the love begins to flow. And when we no longer have the guilt there, we no longer have to see sin in the world, see harm, see suffering, right? So seeing sin and guilt is the call for suffering, right? Sin, guilt, and punishment. Um, but as we tune into our holiness, it feels like you're doing nothing, right? It's almost like, well, that's not enough. This seems very nice. Okay, you're sending love and light or whatever. Until you realize that you're the dreamer. So when you tune in and you become aware of your holiness, which is God's holiness, which is your loving presence, which is always here, as you tune into that, you take away the call for illness. You take away the call for suffering, the call for guilt, and to see it within the world. When you no longer have that call within you, when you begin to feel that loving presence, that goes into the mind of the dreamer. And with the power of that is that when the unconditional love, when the peace, when the forgiveness come into the mind of the dreamer, the dream shifts. And that's where you get healing within the world. And that's where we get the forgiven dream. That's where we get healings. And the dream becomes a little bit happier. The dream is not the goal, right? The goal is not to get a dream where everything's rainbow and lollipops. That's one step along it. Because the real goal is an awakening to that all of this was never really even real. But the first step is the forgiven dream. And so as you awaken to your holiness, your loving presence, um, it has immense power to shift the dream. Whereas this praying, right, the ego praying, right, um, uh, comes with, it's a declaration of lack. It's a declaration of change within the world, that God is not always loving. This one is like, oh my God, I'm always loving. There's this radiance coming through me, which is the radiance of God. And that's unchanging. That can never not be there, right? And so then what you realize is that this must be fake. This can't be real. I know the holiness of God is within me. So why the hell am I dreaming of a dream of suffering and war and death and whatnot, right? And so when that glitch happens within your mind, you realize this does not compute. All of a sudden, the the dream has to shift along with it to match up with what you know is true. When you know that your holiness blesses the world, you can't help but see it. But right now, you don't believe that most of the time. The more that you can tune into that and allow that light to grow, that's going to start to shift your dream. And that's going to benefit you, but also all the suffering people in the world, along with the people who seem to be causing the suffering. It's going to undo all of it. And it's very powerful. When you can see innocence in everyone, you can see the holiness, your holiness flowing to them, and their loving presence blessing you, it 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 brings us closer to that experience of heaven, because that's what heaven really is. So anyway, there's a lot there, a lot. So a lot that I even need to process. So hopefully some of that was clear for some of you guys. Um, uh, hopefully you guys benefited from some of that. If anybody wants to speak before I end the recording, speak now. If not, I'll end it and then people can speak. All right. Okay. Thanks, everybody.